The doorbell rang unexpectedly, making Marina jump. She froze, holding Dima's untouched plate. "I'll get it myself," Marina responded, wiping her hands on a towel. She slowly approached the door, looked through the peephole, and felt the ground slip from beneath her feet. Standing outside was Antonina Pavlovna, her mother-in-law, whom she hadn't seen in 6 months. The woman held large bags of gifts, her face beaming with a smile. "Oh God, she doesn't know," flashed through Marina's mind. Her fingers trembled as she turned the key in the lock. The door opened, and a stately woman in an elegant beige coat stepped forward. "Marinoshka, my dear," her mother-in-law exclaimed, stepping forward for a hug, but then she froze. Her gaze swept over the hallway, noting the changes. The men's boots that used to clutter the shelf were gone, as was her son's favorite jacket hanging on the hook. Antonina Pavlovna slowly turned her eyes to her daughter-in-law, and the smile began to fade from her face. Marina saw the expression on her mother-in-law's face shift: confusion, alarm, understanding. The bags in Antonina Pavlovna's hands trembled. "Where is Sergei?" she asked quietly, though her eyes already held the answer. "Come in, Antonina Pavlovna," Marina said, stepping aside to let her in. "Let me help you with the bags. Grandma's here." A joyful cry came from the children's room, and Dima rushed out, followed by 5-year-old Masha. "My darlings!" Antonina Pavlovna dropped the bags and opened her arms. The children rushed to her, hugging her from both sides. Marina watched the scene, feeling a lump rise in her throat. She remembered how, not long ago, such family gatherings had been filled with genuine joy. Every glance was now a struggle. "Grandma, are you staying long?" Dima asked, hanging on her neck. "What did you bring us?" Masha chirped, peering into the bags. Antonina Pavlovna stroked the children's heads, but her gaze kept returning to Marina, as if searching for answers to unasked questions. "Children," Marina said softly, "let Grandma take off her coat and go into the room. We'll join you later." In the living room, a heavy silence settled. The children eagerly unpacked their gifts, while the two women sat across from each other, unsure how to begin the conversation. "I've been trying to reach Sergei for the past 2 weeks," Antonina Pavlovna finally said. "His phone was always unavailable. I decided to come myself." She fell silent, looking at her daughter-in-law. "Mama, look what doll Grandma brought me." Masha ran up with her new toy. "Very pretty, sweetheart," Marina said, patting her daughter's head. "Dima, take your sister and play in the nursery for a while, okay? Grandma and I need to talk." The children reluctantly left, and the room fell silent again. Outside, dusk slowly descended, painting everything in shades of gray. "How long?" Antonina Pavlovna asked quietly. "How long has he been gone?" Marina took a deep breath. 3 months, he left for another woman." Antonina Pavlovna closed her eyes. Her hands, resting on her knees, trembled slightly. "Who is she?" "His new colleague, 12 years younger than him. I don't know the details. He just packed his things and left." "Why didn't you call me?" There was hurt in her mother-in-law's voice. "I didn't know how," Marina admitted honestly. "I always took such pride in him." "He's my son," Antonina Pavlovna said slowly. "But that doesn't mean I approve of everything he does." She paused. "And the children?" Marina felt her throat tighten. "Dima understands everything. He tries to be strong, but I hear him cry at night sometimes. And Masha." She swallowed the lump in her throat. "She keeps asking when Daddy will come home." Antonina Pavlovna stood and walked to the window, her silhouette sharply outlined. "How are you managing financially?" she asked, turning back to her daughter-in-law. "I went back to work. I took extra hours at school, and on weekends, I tutor privately." Marina tried to keep her voice steady. "Sergei sends money, but it's barely enough for the essentials." Her mother-in-law sat back down in the armchair, sinking heavily into the cushion. "Why did he do this?" she asked, more to herself than to Marina. "We raised him differently." "Grandma!" Masha burst into the room. "When is Daddy coming? You'll call him, won't you? Tell him you're here." The two women exchanged glances. Tears stood in Antonina Pavlovna's eyes. "Sunshine, Daddy is busy at work, but I'll talk to him." Marina turned away, hiding her own tears. How hard it was every day to answer these innocent questions, to see the hope in her daughter's eyes. "Can I draw a picture for Daddy?" Masha perked up. Of course, sweetheart. Go draw. When the girl ran off, Antonina Pavlovna sighed heavily. Forgive me for my son, for not raising him right, for not calling all these months. You're not to blame. Marina shook her head. You were a wonderful mother and mother-in-law. Her voice trembled, and she fell silent. Memories flooded back how Antonina Pavlovna had taught her to cook Sergei's favorite dish, how she had helped with the children when they were tiny, how she had supported her with advice in difficult times. You know, her mother-in-law said slowly, I felt something was wrong. A mother's heart. But I didn't want to believe it. I thought maybe he was just busy, tired. Silence hung in the room, broken only by the ticking of the clock on the wall and the distant sound of children's voices. What are you going to do now? Antonina Pavlovna asked. Marina shrugged. Keep living. For the children. I don't have a choice. There's always a choice, her mother-in-law said firmly. And I won't let you face this alone. She stood and began pacing the room. I'll talk to Sergei tomorrow. Let him try not to answer. Then she stopped. And we'll figure out how to organize your life better. Maybe you should move closer to your grandfather and me. But the children have school, kindergarten here. Well sorted out. The main thing is that you're not alone. A crash and Masha's cry came from the nursery. Both women rushed in. The girl had tried to reach the paints on the top shelf and knocked over a box of toys. Dima stood beside her, looking guilty. I tried to help, but I didn't make it in time, he said. Antonina Pavlovna picked up her crying granddaughter. There, my good girl. Well, clean it up now. Marina began gathering the scattered toys while her mother-in-law rocked the already drowsy Masha in her arms. Later, over a cup of tea in the kitchen, Antonina Pavlovna suddenly asked, Do you remember how we first met? Marina smiled weakly. Of course. I was so nervous before our first meeting that I broke your favorite cup. I thought then, what a lively girl, so genuine, not pretending. Antonina Pavlovna paused. You know, I knew right away that you were the one who could make my son happy. Apparently, I was wrong, Marina said bitterly. No, her mother-in-law replied firmly. You gave him everything: love, a family, children. That he didn't appreciate it. That's his choice, his mistake. I thought then, what a lively girl, so genuine, not pretending. Antonina Pavlovna paused. You know, I knew right away that you were the one who could make my son happy. Apparently, I was wrong, Marina said bitterly. No, her mother-in-law replied firmly. You gave him everything: love, a family, children. That he didn't appreciate it. That's his choice, his mistake. Outside, the noise of a passing car briefly lit up the kitchen, making both women squint. Sometimes I think, Marina said quietly, maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I should have paid more attention to him, not just the children and work. Stop it, her mother-in-law cut her off. Don't you dare blame yourself. You were the perfect wife, and you're a wonderful mother. The next morning began with the smell of fresh pancakes. Antonina Pavlovna had woken up early to treat the household to breakfast. Dima appeared first, drawn by the appetizing aroma. Grandma, did you stay up all night? Not at all, she smiled, flipping another pancake. I just got up early. At my age, I don't need much sleep. Daddy loved your pancakes, Dima said suddenly. A silence fell in the kitchen. Antonina Pavlovna froze with the spatula in her hand, then slowly turned to her grandson. You know, Dima, no matter what happens, you can always count on Grandma and Grandpa too. We love you very much. I know, the boy replied quietly. Grandma, will you really talk to Daddy? Of course, she said firmly, though inside, she felt a pang at the thought of the upcoming conversation with her son. Marina entered the kitchen. Good morning, Antonina Pavlovna. Why did you get up so early? Sit. Her mother-in-law waved her hands when Marina tried to help. I can manage. Wake Masha up, or she'll be late for kindergarten. While Marina woke her daughter, Antonina Pavlovna set the table, watching the family gather for breakfast. She thought about how much her son had missed, trading this cozy happiness for fleeting dreams of a new life. After breakfast, the usual morning routine began. Marina braided Masha's hair, Dima checked his school bag, and Antonina Pavlovna packed snacks for the children. Should I take the children today? She offered. You can get ready for work in peace. Thank you, but… Marina hesitated. I'm afraid there might be questions at kindergarten. I understand, her mother-in-law nodded. Then I'll stay home, tidy up, and in the evening, we'll cook something together. When the door closed behind Marina and the children, Antonina Pavlovna sank heavily into a chair. She took out her phone, found her son's number, and hesitated over the call button. What would she say to him? How could she explain the pain she had seen in her grandchildren's eyes? Taking a deep breath, she pressed call. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Hello, Mama. Sergei's voice sounded surprised. Is something wrong? Something is wrong, Seryoza. I'm with your real family. Silence hung in the air. Mama, I can't talk right now. I'm at work. You can, and you will. She cut him off. Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think you could just erase 15 years of marriage, abandon your children? I didn't abandon them. I send money. I call. Money. Antonina Pavlovna felt a wave of anger rise inside her. Do you think that's all children need? Do you know your son cries at night? That your daughter asks about you every day? Mama, it's complicated. What's complicated about loving your children? I do love them. Sergei raised his voice. But I have a right to my own happiness. Happiness, she said bitterly. And what is happiness, Seryoza? To betray those who trusted you, to destroy your family. You don't understand. No, it's you who doesn't understand. Tears rang in her voice. I raised you to be a different kind of man, to take responsibility for your actions. And you've thrown it all away. Silence fell again, broken only by Sergei's heavy breathing. Mama, I have to go. I have a meeting. Always running from difficult conversations, Antonina Pavlovna shook her head. How unlike yourself you become. After the call, she sat motionless for a long time, staring out the window. Then she stood and began methodically tidying the apartment. Wiping dust from the shelves, she noticed the family album. She opened it and froze. The first page showed a photo from Sergei and Marina's wedding, so happy, so young. She turned the page, Dima's birth, Sergei holding the tiny bundle, his eyes shining with pride. Another page, Masha's first steps, family vacations, birthdays. Tears fell onto the glossy pages. She carefully wiped them away with a handkerchief. The day dragged on slowly. She prepared lunch, even managed to go to the store for groceries. At 3 p.m., Marina picked up Masha from kindergarten after finishing her lessons at school. Dima returned on his own. He was big enough to walk by himself now. Grandma, what's for lunch? The boy asked, sniffing the air as he entered. This is home, sunshine. Antonina Pavlovna hugged her grandson. Here, you are loved more than anywhere else in the world. In the evening, when the children were already asleep, Antonina Pavlovna told Marina about her conversation with Sergei. One didn't want to interfere, Marina said quietly. It's not his choice, her mother-in-law shook her head. When a person has children, they don't have the right to make such choices. They must think of their children first. Marina unexpectedly burst into tears. You know what's the worst? I still love him, despite everything. Antonina Pavlovna silently embraced her daughter-in-law, letting her cry. The next morning, Sergei called himself. Mama, his voice sounded guilty. I've been thinking about what you said. And maybe I could come see the children. Are you sure you're ready to look them in the eye? I miss them, he finally said. I really do. Then why haven't you come? Why hide behind excuses? It's hard to explain, try. I'm afraid, Sergei admitted after a long pause. Afraid of their disappointment, their questions. Afraid I won't be able to explain. Try explaining to me first, Antonina Pavlovna said softly. I don't know when it all went wrong. His voice sounded lost. It just seemed like life was passing me by. Like I was stuck in a rut. And you thought new relationships would change everything? I guess so, he sighed. Mama, I made such a mistake. Mistakes can be fixed, she said carefully, if you truly want to. And Marina, how is she? She works 2 jobs, raises the children, tries to stay strong. I send money. Stop it, his mother cut him off. Money isn't the main thing. You know Marina, she never chased after material things. I know, Sergei said quietly. Then why did you destroy everything? Silence hung in the air again, heavy with Sergei's breathing. I'll come tonight, he finally said. If I can. Ask Marina. It's her home. Mama, you'll be there, won't you? Please. I will, she sighed. But not for you, for the children. They need support. Thank you, Sergei exhaled. I'll try to fix everything. We'll see, Marina replied quietly when Antonina Pavlovna told her the news. When the doorbell rang at 6 p.m., Marina flinched and paled. I'll get it, Antonina Pavlovna said. Sergei stood on the threshold, gaunt, lost, holding bags of gifts. Hello, Mama, he said quietly. Antonina Pavlovna silently stepped aside, letting her son in. Marina appeared in the hallway. Hello, she said in a lifeless voice. Marian as Sergei began, but he was interrupted by Masha's joyful cry. Daddy! The girl flew out of the nursery and threw herself at her father. Sergei lifted her into his arms and held her tightly. Tears glistened in his eyes. My little girl, he whispered, burying his face in her hair. Dima appeared in the doorway, hesitating to approach. His face showed a complex mix of emotions and wariness. Son, Sergei reached out to him. Dima slowly walked toward his father. Sergei put Masha down and tried to hug his son, but the boy pulled away. Where were you? He asked, looking his father in the eye. Why didn't you come for so long? A heavy silence fell in the hallway. I was busy with work, Sergei faltered. You're lying, Dima said quietly. I know everything. You left for another woman. Marina paled even more. Antonina Pavlovna placed a hand on her shoulder in silent support. Dima, Sergei knelt in front of his son. You're right. I made a mistake, a big one. We were sad, the boy continued. Masha cried. Mom thinks I don't see her crying at night, but I do. Daddy, are you back for good? Masha intervened, grabbing her father's hand. Sergei looked helplessly at Marina. She stood straight, only her fingers nervously fidgeting with the edge of her cardigan. Let's go into the room, Antonina Pavlovna suggested gently. We all need to talk. They sat down, Sergei in the armchair, Masha on his lap, Dima on the sofa next to his mother, Antonina Pavlovna in a chair by the window. I brought you gifts, Sergei began awkwardly. We don't need gifts, Dima spoke up again. We need a real dad. I am a real dad, son. No, the boy stood up. Real dads don't abandon their children. They don't leave for other women. He burst into tears and ran out of the room. Marina moved to follow, but Antonina Pavlovna stopped her. I'll go. When she returned, Masha, now quiet on her father's lap, suddenly asked, Daddy, is that other woman nice? Marina stood up abruptly. Masha, it's time for bed. But, Mom, it's late, Marina insisted. Sergei gently set his daughter down. Go on, sunshine. I'll come again. When Marina took the girl away, he buried his face in his hands. What have I done? Silence hung in the room, broken only by Dima's muffled sobs from the next room, where his grandmother was talking to him. Marina returned to the living room a few minutes later and sat across from her ex-husband. Why did you come? I miss the children. Only the children. There was bitterness in her voice. Sergei looked up at her. Marina, I ruined everything. Yes, she agreed. And what did you think? I was confused, he said quietly. I thought I'd found love. And what about the 15 years before that? Wasn't that love? It was, Sergei admitted. Real love. I just didn't appreciate it. And now? Marina asked. What's changed? Now, everything. He stood and began pacing the room. You know, Mama's right. I'm not the man I used to be. I betrayed everything I believed in. I betrayed you, the children. And what do you want now? To come back. To try to fix everything. And your new love. That was a mistake, Marina. A terrible mistake. Antonina Pavlovna re-entered the room alone. Dima doesn't want to come out. He said he's tired and wants to sleep. Sergei moved toward the door, but his mother stopped him. Give him time. How much time? He asked bitterly. How much time does it take to forgive betrayal? Are you willing to wait? Marina asked quietly. I'm willing to prove every day that you can trust me again, he said firmly. Antonina Pavlovna silently watched the conversation, understanding that the family's fate hung in the balance. You know, Marina said slowly, I've thought a lot these past months about us, the children. What went wrong? And what did you think? Sergei asked. That love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice to choose to be together, no matter what, every day. And could you make that choice again? There was hope in his voice. Marina shook her head. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. There's too much pain, too much resentment. I understand, he said quietly. But I'll try. Every day. The children, Antonina Pavlovna intervened. They're the most important thing. No matter what you decide, they must come first. I know, Mama, Sergei nodded. Now I know. Days passed. Sergei came every evening, spent time with the children, helped Dima with his homework, read stories to Masha. Marina watched these changes with cautious hope. She saw Dima gradually thaw, Masha smile happily, Sergei himself change. The old arrogance disappeared, replaced by a new, deeper seriousness. He listened more than he spoke, cared more for others than himself. One evening, when the children were already asleep, he lingered in the hallway. Marina, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you. She was silent, feeling her heart ache. A month passed. Masha had grown used to her father appearing every day. Dima was still wary, but no longer locked himself in his room when Sergei arrived. Marina noticed how much Sergei had changed. He brought back the old family album he had taken when he left. It belongs here. At home. The word home echoed in Marina's heart. One evening, Dima asked his father to stay and help with a difficult math problem. They sat over the textbook until late. Passing by her son's room, Marina overheard their conversation. Dad, are you really not going to leave again? Never, son. Unless you and Mom want me to. And that other woman? That was a mistake, Dima. A terrible mistake that almost cost me what's most precious. One weekend, the whole family went to visit Antonina Pavlovna. The old house welcomed them with warmth and the smell of pies. My dears! The grandmother joyfully greeted them. The grandfather, silent and stern, simply hugged his grandchildren tightly. When everyone had dispersed through the house, he quietly said to his son, "Take care of them, Seryoza. You may not get another chance." "I know, Dad," Sergei replied. "Now I know." Marina, watching the scene, felt warmth spread through her chest. In the evening, when the children were already asleep in their old room upstairs, the adults sat on the veranda, talking about simple things: work, school, plans for the future. "Remember," Antonina Pavlovna suddenly said, "how you first came to us, Marinoshka? You were so shy." Marina smiled. "I remember. I was afraid you wouldn't like me." "Nonsense, dear," her mother-in-law said simply. "You were family from the start." Sergei looked at his wife, and the tenderness in his eyes took Marina's breath away. On the way home, Masha fell asleep in the back seat, her head resting on her brother's shoulder. Dima also began to doze off. "Our little travelers are tired," Marina said quietly. Sergei glanced at her quickly. "Marina, can I stay tonight? Just to be near you." She was silent for a long time, looking out the window. "You can," she finally said. Evenings, after putting the children to bed, they sat in the kitchen. There was still distance between them, but not as insurmountable as before. "You know," Sergei said quietly, "every day I thank fate for this chance, for the opportunity to fix everything. And I thank fate that our children are smiling again." Marina replied, "That hope has returned to their eyes." "You're amazing." He touched her hand gently. "Your ability to forgive, to believe in people, in love, in family." Time passed. Old wounds gradually healed, making way for new experiences, a new understanding. Sergei didn't just return, he became a different person, more sensitive, more attentive. Marina also grew stronger, more confident in herself, learning to appreciate not only her family, but also herself. Dima stopped locking himself in his room when his father came. Now they did homework together, played, talked heart to heart. And Masha, she simply radiated happiness when the whole family was together. One evening, when the children were already asleep, Sergei and Marina sat in the living room. Rain gently tapped against the window. "Remember," Sergei said quietly, "how we met? On a rainy evening like this." Marina smiled. "I remember. You gave me your umbrella and got soaked to the skin, and you never once regretted it." He was silent for a moment. "Until the moment I made the biggest mistake of my life." "The past can't be changed," she said softly. "But on the weekends, the whole family went to the park. Sergey really did bring a kite, as he had promised Dima. They flew it together, and the boys' joyful laughter echoed through the park. Masha jumped around, trying to catch the kite's tail. Marina watched them and thought about how amazing life was, how a new, perhaps even stronger happiness could be born from the shards of a broken one. "What are you thinking about?" Sergey asked, coming up to her. "About us," she answered simply. "About how anything is possible if you believe." In the evening, Marina called on Tanina Pavlovna. "I think everything is falling into place for us. I believed in you, my dear," her mother-in-law replied warmly. "In your love, in your wisdom. It's thanks to you," Marina said quietly. "You didn't let us fall. You supported us in the most difficult moment. No, my dear, it was all you. Your hearts found their way back to each other." Marina smiled, looking through the window at her husband, rocking Masha to sleep. Months turned into a new story for their family, a story of forgiveness, repentance, and a new, more mature love. Sergey proved his change, not with words, but with deeds, every day. Marina learned to trust again. The children blossomed, feeling their world whole once more. Antonina Pavlovna simply loved them all as they were, and rejoiced that her family had weathered the storm and grown stronger. One morning at breakfast, Dima suddenly said, "You know, I now understand what it means to love." "What, son?" Sergey asked. "To love means to be able to forgive and give a second chance." Marina felt a lump rise in her throat. Sergey hugged his son tightly. "You're wiser than all of us, little one." "I'm not little." Dima grumbled habitually, but didn't pull away from his father's embrace. 6 months had passed since Antonina Pavlovna first stepped into their changed home. 6 months of hard work on themselves, on their relationships, on rebuilding trust. But it was worth it. They had grown stronger, both as a couple and as a family, learning to cherish every moment together, every smile, every hug. Sergey never returned to his old apartment. He stayed home with his family, day by day restoring what he had almost destroyed. They welcomed the new year together, children, parents, grandparents. When the clock struck 12, Masha shouted, "Make a wish." "I already have everything," Marina said quietly, looking at her loved ones. Sergey gently took her hand. "I thought long and hard about my wish, and then I realized the most important thing has already come true. You forgave me. You gave me a chance to fix everything." Dima, who had been quiet in the corner of the sofa, suddenly said, "I'm glad we're together again." Masha climbed onto her father's lap. "And I always knew Daddy would come back. You just had to believe very, very hard." Antonina Pavlovna secretly wiped away tears, watching them. Life doesn't stand still, it moves forward, bringing new trials and new joys. But now they faced everything together, as a real family. The story of Marina and Sergey became not just a story of forgiveness, but of how true love can overcome any obstacle, of how everyone deserves a second chance if they are sincerely willing to change. And when Antonina Pavlovna looked at this family, she understood. Sometimes you have to lose something precious to realize its true value. And then, perhaps, fate will give you a chance to get it back, but on a new, deeper level of understanding and love.